It is now time to pick each and every one of the week number 7 NFL games to end today's show. For the season, straight up, we are 58-36 picking each game. Last week, we had a decent week, went 9-5. There are only 13 games to pick in week number 7. Crazy just how the NFL season continues to fly by each and every year. So without further ado, hit the music. It's time to pick the week number 7 games in the NFL. We'll start off with Thursday Night Football. The Denver Broncos, they're sitting with a record of 3-3. They'll be heading on the road to Cleveland, taking on the 3-3 Browns. We just spoke about just how concerned I am about the Cleveland Browns and really just how big this game is for both teams. I'm going to take the Denver Broncos to go into Cleveland and beat the Browns. I just don't like the vibes around the Cleveland Browns right now. I really don't. And I think Case Keenum is fine. I don't really think he's going to be the reason why the Browns lose this game. I just think Denver's the better team. And Teddy Bridgewater, this is usually the kind of spot as an underdog playing on the road in prime time where he succeeds. I think it is a very good chance that we see a very low-scoring game, maybe 16-13, 19-16, a lot of field goals. I think with the wins being a factor in Cleveland as well, Denver is going to win a very low-scoring game, and the loser of this game is in serious trouble. The Broncos, I thought last week, that was a chance for them to take advantage of a Raider team that just lost their coach. We know how ugly that situation really has gotten with John Gruden. But hey, the Raiders came to play, the Broncos didn't. I'm going to predict the Broncos come to play in week number 7 on Thursday Night Football. Always tough to trust a road team in this spot, but I will take Denver over Cleveland. Let's go to the 1 o'clock games on Sunday. The Washington football team, they have been one of the more disappointing teams in the NFL so far this season. Their defense cannot stop anyone. They will be heading on the road to Lambeau Field, taking on the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers, they're a team that has been just finding ways to win games, whether it's a close game, whether it's a blowout. I've been really impressed with them, and I'm going to take the Packers to beat the Washington football team at Lambeau Field. David Bakhtiari, it's looking like he's going to be making his season debut for the Packers in this one, and I just think flat out they're better than the Washington football team. We saw what Taylor Heineke did in a shootout last week against Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, he couldn't even score in the second half. I do think Green Bay's defense, although it's banged up, it's doing all it could. I do think the Packers' offense will outscore Washington, and Green Bay will get the win over the Washington football team. 1 o'clock game in the AFC, Kansas City. They're heading on the road with a 3-3 record to the 4-2 Tennessee Titans. And look, I think Kansas City last week in their game against Washington, they showed some good signs. Their defense actually somehow was able to shut out Washington in the second half. And look, I still don't think their defense is really any good. One game isn't going to change my opinion from that. But I do think it is not as bad as it's been for the first couple weeks of the season. Tennessee was really impressive against the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football. They came to play, and Derrick Henry is a totally vulnerable matchup for this Chiefs defense. He could just run for 300 yards, and I wouldn't be surprised. But Kansas City's offense, they don't punt. You guys realize that? As long as they're not turning the ball over, which I totally understand has happened on a pretty frequent basis, they are able to score points, and I do think Kansas City is going to be able to outscore Tennessee. I will take Mahomes over Tannehill. I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a shootout, but I like Kansas City to come away with the victory over the Tennessee Titans. I do think that both of these teams do look like playoff teams right now. I was impressed with Tennessee's victory over Buffalo. Todd Dowling, their offensive coordinator, which I thought without Arthur Smith could be a big concern. He did a pretty good job calling plays. We'll see what Tennessee looks like going forward. We'll see if their defense could just keep on getting better after that big 4th-and-1 stop against Buffalo. I'll take Kansas City. Really, I think when you compare these two teams, it's going to be whatever defense plays better to see who is more dangerous going forward. How about the Atlanta Falcons? They're coming off the bye week. They're sitting at a record at 1-3. They're heading on the road to Miami to take on the Dolphins. I'm going to take the Dolphins to win this game. And I totally understand the Dolphins have been a team that has really cost me so far this season. And so far with the Deshaun Watson, Tua Tagovailoa rumors in the news, it could be an ugly, ugly Sunday if you're a Miami Dolphin fan. But look, I don't think Tua was necessarily the problem last week for the Miami Dolphins. I think Brian Flores let them down, and really he's just too good of a coach to be making mistakes the way he did, going out of the shotgun on a 4th and short, 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, just showing a lot of inconsistencies as a head coach in terms of decisions to go for it or not. But look, I just don't trust the Falcons. I understand they had a nice win in London against the New York Jets, and they're starting to get healthier. It does look like Calvin Ridley is going to play in this game. Hopefully Russell Gage is able to suit up as well. I just don't trust Atlanta. I really don't. And Miami is a team that I don't think they could play as badly as they've played over the last couple weeks. I do think they find a way to win this game at home against Atlanta, but they're in big trouble going forward. You just got to hope, if you're a Dolphin fan, that somehow Tua shows you some flashes and you're just able to gain some optimism. I will take Miami over Atlanta. The Carolina Panthers, after starting off their season 3-0, they are now 3-3. They're heading on the road to MetLife Stadium, taking on the New York Giants. And this is an interesting one. The Giants have now lost 2 in a row after their big road overtime win against the New Orleans Saints. The Giants are still super banged up. It doesn't look like Saquon Barkley is going to play in this one. Kenny Galladay, Kadarius Toney doesn't look like they're going to be playing as well. Daniel Jones was able to play last week against the Rams. He took a brutal hit against the Dallas Cowboys, but it looks like he's been okay. And the Panthers need this game. They really do. They blew that game against the Minnesota Vikings. They block a punt. You think they get some momentum, but still, their defense, which I thought was one of the better units in the league, it hasn't been able to get the job done. We're really seeing Sam Darnold regress a little bit without Christian McCaffrey. As one of the best running backs in the league, we are really getting a front seat of the differences that he's able to make in all assets of the football game. With that being said, I actually like the Panthers to win this game. I think Matt Rule is the better coach than Joe Judge. I think the Panthers are the better football team than the Giants. They are. I just think that Carolina, even though they've lost 3 games in a row, they're too good of a team to just not be able to get back on track on a consistent basis. And I just think the Giants are done. I didn't necessarily blame them for that loss against the Los Angeles Rams. That was just a clear mismatch from start to finish. This is going to be a much more competitive game, but I do think Carolina is able to get the job done. And in terms of Joe Judge and his future as head coach of the New York Giants, I don't think you would fire him after 2 years based on just terrible performance. I just think the more I look at this situation, you got to blow this whole thing up. Dave Gettleman has to go as a GM, and I don't think you're treating your team properly when you bring back a head coach and you still look for a GM without giving that GM an ability to hire his own head coach. So I think the Giants are in trouble. They might just be in need of blowing the whole thing up. I like Carolina in this one. We will stay in New York. The Jets, they're heading on the road following their bye week. They are sitting with a record of 1-4. They're heading to Foxborough, facing the New England Patriots for already the second time this season. We remember the first time these two teams played at MetLife Stadium. Zach Wilson threw 3 interceptions in the first half. The Patriots rolled the Jets in that game. It wasn't particularly close. And I'm going to pick the Patriots to get back on track and win this game against the Jets as well. However, what I will say here is I don't expect Zach Wilson to play that bad. He really didn't play particularly good in London. He really just has to focus on making the easy throw and taking what the defense gives him, I should say. And Robert Saleh, there's still a lot to be said about this New York Jets coaching staff. It's only been a handful of games. They get the early bye week. They showed some good signs in that game in London against the Falcons, but when the Jets defense really needed to make a stop at the most crucial time of that game, they were just flat out not able to get the job done. I don't think New England is particularly good, but they were competitive against Tampa Bay. They were competitive against Dallas, 2 teams. I just think the Patriots are due to win a home game. This is one they have to have. And the AFC, I don't necessarily think they're good enough to be a playoff team, but a win here would keep them in the conversation at least. I will take the Patriots to get the win over the New York Jets. The final game in the 1 o'clock window, we will go to the AFC North, another divisional battle, as Joe Burrow, he will lead the 4-2 Cincinnati Bengals on the road to Baltimore to take on the 5-1 Ravens. And this is going to be an interesting game because I think the Bengals are really good. I actually think their defense has been one of the more surprising units in not only the AFC, but all of the NFL so far. No one really expected the Bengals defense to be a good unit, but they're a legit top 10 defense with guys like Trey Hendrickson and Von Bell, Logan Wilson at linebacker. They have some players. However, at the same time, the way this Baltimore Raven offense is playing, I just don't want to pick against them right now. And it's crazy because in that game against the Chargers, the Ravens dominated, right? They really were able to control that game from start to finish. And still, it's not like Lamar Jackson played particularly great. Everyone around him played well for really the first time all season. We saw in the game against Indianapolis on Monday Night Football, Baltimore got off to a really tough start. But as more time went on, Lamar was just able to make more plays. And by the end, it was just apparent that in that situation, Lamar Jackson was not going to be able to let the Ravens lose that football game. I was impressed with what he was able to do. I think the Bengals are a good team, but I think that the Ravens are going to win this football game at home. Let's go to the 4 o'clock slate, and this is going to be a game filled with all of the storylines. The Detroit Lions, they're sitting at 0-6 following last week's loss at home to the Cincinnati Bengals. They'll be heading on the road to LA, taking on the 5-1 Rams. And it's crazy because Jared Goff, a quarterback that, look, we all knew he had his flaws when you watched him on a week-in, week-out basis when he was a member of the Los Angeles Rams. But still, I never thought he was particularly terrible as long as he had some help around him. I was just a little confused as to why Sean McVay was so eager and looked like to be in such a hurry to move on from him. But now you see that Dan Campbell is already calling his quarterback out by week number 6. And the Lions were a team for the first handful of games so far this season had been competitive. But last week was a big step back. I just think the Rams are the significantly better team here. Matthew Stafford is going to be pretty motivated in this spot as well to play as well as he possibly could against his former team. And I just think the Lions are in trouble. I do think Dan Campbell is the right coach to eventually get them out of this. Just this year, Jared Goff is not going to be the answer as the starting quarterback. They are going to have to find a new franchise quarterback, maybe in the draft. And Jared Goff, there's just a reason why Sean McVay, in a winner-go-home playoff game, literally decided to start John Wofford over him. That's how done he really was with Jared Goff. And keep in mind, McVay as the head coach was able to make the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. We'll see if those two guys have any interactions. I really don't think that storyline is spoken about enough, just how Sean McVay and Jared Goff and that all ended with the Rams. But they decided to be very aggressive to get Matthew Stafford for a reason. I will take the Rams to win this football game. The next 4 o'clock game, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're coming off a tough Thursday night football loss. They're going to be heading on the road to Vegas, taking on the Raiders. And the Raiders deserve credit. That was a really nice win they put together on the road following all the events that happened with their head coach, John Gruden. Congrats to Rich Bisaccia getting his first career win as an NFL head coach. But so the Raiders are still sitting at 4-2. They are in a good position to make the playoffs. I think this is a game they have to have. I do think this is also a classic spot. We saw the Raiders a couple weeks ago just really not be able to score the football in a big game against the Chicago Bears. And the Raiders have just been a team that really, besides last week, they've played in a lot of close games. And I think the Eagles are a team that's perfect for that close game narrative. I do think it's going to be a close, competitive game. But with that being said, I'm going to take the Raiders to get the win at home over the Philadelphia Eagles. There's still legit talent on this team. Henry Ruggs, you watch him each and every week, and he is only getting better. Darren Waller is obviously a stud. Hunter Renfrow is a legit receiver. You hope that Josh Jacobs could just somehow be able to stay healthy. But even Kenyon Drake has made a nice impact for the Raiders. Derek Carr is the better quarterback in this game. I do like the Raiders to get the win over the Eagles. I'm really not the biggest fan of Nick Sirianni. His game plan against Tampa Bay I get the Buccaneers are a really good run defense, but he should have listened to what Brandon Staley said in his press conference a couple weeks ago. Running the ball just naturally makes you a more physical football team, which makes you better, which makes you tougher, which just improves your overall mindset. Miles Sanders is a really good player. I don't know why the Eagles don't run the ball more with him. I will take the Raiders to win this game at home. The Houston Texans, they're sitting with the record of 1-5. They're heading on the road to Arizona, taking on the only remaining undefeated team in the NFL. That is the Arizona Cardinals. And I'm going to take the Cardinals to win this game. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I think the Texans are just done. They're bad. And last week against the Indianapolis Colts, there were a lot of people that expected them to be at least competitive. It's not like Indianapolis has really popped throughout their first couple games. Houston even gave New England somewhat of a game a couple weeks ago. You could really make the argument that was a game. Houston was the better team and should have won, but Arizona is just the better team here. Kyler Murray has been playing great football. You just hope he's able to stay healthy throughout the course of the season, and when we get to January, I was impressed with how Arizona was able to go on the road in not an easy environment like Cleveland, flying cross country, and they were able to get the job done. That's a really nice job by Arizona. I do think they are one of the best teams in the NFL, and I just want to see them play some high-level opponents again. I totally understand they've gone to Cleveland and have gotten a win, which was impressive. They were able to go to L.A. and get a win over the Rams, and Arizona might be legit, but in the big games in January against teams like Tampa Bay, against a team like Green Bay, even against a team like the Rams, again, they'll play one more time, obviously. I just want to see what's in store for Arizona, but their veterans and the additions that they have made so far during the offseason have really paid off. That's a nice job by Steve Keim and company with the Arizona Cardinals. 3 more games to go. America's Game of the Week on CBS, the Chicago Bears. They're sitting with a record of 3-3. They're heading on the road to Tampa Bay, taking on the 5-1 Buccaneers. And look, the Bears have actually been playing some okay football. I was impressed with what they were able to do a couple weeks ago against the Detroit Lions and what they were able to do on the road in their win against the Raiders. Their defense finally lived up to the hype and played one of the better games that I've seen from them in a while. But this is a tough spot going against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. We saw Chicago on the same field as Green Bay last week, and it was a competitive game. I do think this game is going to be pretty competitive as well, but I just think the Bucs are the better team in this one. Tom Brady playing some of the best football of his career, honestly. He looks very sharp, was impressive on that Thursday night game against the Philadelphia Eagles. It's looking like Gronk has a good chance of playing in this game as well. And I just think Tampa Bay is the better team. The key for Tampa Bay is from now until we get to January, I just want to see them get more healthy on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the secondary. Chicago did a good job running the football against Green Bay last week with Khalil Herbert. I just don't think they're really going to be able to do that in this situation against Tampa Bay. Obviously, one of the best rush defenses in the league. I will take Tampa Bay to win this game, and I do think right now they are the clear-cut best team in the NFC South and a clear contender at the top of the NFC. 2 more games to go. Sunday Night Football, the Colts, they're coming off one of their more impressive wins of the season. They're heading on the road to San Francisco. Indianapolis sitting at 2-4 going into this one. San Francisco at 2-3 coming off the bye week. I think this is going to be a close game that could honestly go either way. I think Indianapolis, I get Tennessee was able to beat Buffalo, but I do think the Colts aren't completely dead in terms of the AFC South conversation because Carson Wentz hasn't been the problem. One thing we have always said about the Colts when we look at this roster and when we look at this coaching staff, if their quarterback plays well, this roster should be really good. We saw Phillip Rivers, nothing special last year, but he was good. He was all right, and he was able to lead this Colts roster to the playoffs. I don't think there's any reason why Carson Wentz won't be able to do the same thing with Frank Reich. This is a Colt team that historically gets off to slow starts and then usually is able to pick things up. And San Francisco, they really haven't been impressive. Trey Lance is still banged up. It's looking like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get the call under center. And I'm actually going to take the Indianapolis Colts to win this football game. I think that San Francisco has just been really non-impressive. And if you've listened to this show, you know historically I'm not the biggest Kyle Shanahan, or I am the biggest Kyle Shanahan fan, I loved the work he was able to do when he got that team to the Super Bowl last year. They went through a lot of injuries, but he was able to at least keep them competitive. But he just has to show me the ability to win more football games, especially in the big spot. Indianapolis impressed me last week against Houston. It's unfortunate that Paris Campbell, a young receiver that was making some big-time plays last week, it's unfortunate he's not going to play. T.Y. Hilton is questionable for this game. I think he is a huge key to this Colt team if he does play. I'm going to predict Indianapolis to go on the road and beat San Francisco. I'm kind of out on the Niners until they at least prove to me that they're legit worthy of being in the conversation. Finally, Monday Night Football. The Saints. I think New Orleans, coming off of a bye week, could be considered one of the forgotten teams in the NFL, especially in the NFC, where I think the top 5 teams are pretty set between the Rams, the Buccaneers, in no order, by the way. The Rams, the Buccaneers, the Packers, the Cardinals, and the Cowboys. I think those are the clear top 5 teams in the NFC right now. But behind those 5, San Francisco is in the conversation. New Orleans is in the conversation. I feel like Seattle would have been that team if Russell Wilson was healthy. We obviously all know the deal. He is not. And look, Seattle was competitive against Pittsburgh, and New Orleans is a team that I feel like you just don't really know what you're going to get from them on a night-in, night-out basis. With that being said, I am actually going to pick the upset. I'm going to pick the Seahawks to win this game over the Saints. There is just something about the Seattle Seahawks playing at home in prime time. Jameis Winston, I get Seattle's defense isn't good, and Jameis could maybe get right against this defense. The thing about Jameis is even though he's been able to win games for the Saints, it's not like he's really been putting up big-time Jameis numbers. He's still thrown some bad interceptions. He's had some very up-and-down games. He's already won at New England. I just don't think the road success is going to continue for Jameis. I'm going to take Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks to win this game. You hope that Chris Carson is able to play. Alex Collins was fine. He looks good against the Steelers, so we'll see what happens. To recap my picks, I like Denver over Cleveland on Thursday Night Football. I will take Green Bay over the Washington football team. Kansas City over Tennessee. Miami over Atlanta. Panthers over the Giants. Patriots over the Jets. Ravens over the Bengals. Rams over the Lions. Raiders over the Eagles, Cardinals over the Texans, Bucks over the Bears, Colts over the Niners, and the Seahawks over the Saints. Week 7, NFL picks.